I'm Rob Licuria, Senior Editor at Gold Derby, here with Chris McKenna and Erik Sommers, who co-wrote the screenplay for Spider-Man No Way Home. Guys, just the thought of being part of the MCU, particularly as one of its storytellers, for me would be like a career and life highlight. So I'd love to know how you both feel about not only working within that universe, as you have in the past films, but primarily shepherding the beloved Spider-Man mythology for a new generation of fans and diehard Marvel fans alike.
I think at first we came on to Homecoming shortly before production started, and it was pretty intense and catching up and just getting into the work real quick. And it didn't quite sink in, I think, because we were just so busy. I think when it came out is when it first really sunk in that for me, that we were part of this incredible MCU, this incredible phenomenon of the MCU, and that we were selling a new version of Spider-Man to new fans. And it just sort of hit me, and it was equal parts thrilling and a little intimidating. But I think then we were able to just start to really enjoy. We enjoyed it all the way through, but I would say after I came to terms with it, then we were on to the next one, and it's been a thrill. It's a dream come true. I used to have Spider-Man toys when I was a kid, and I would play with them. I had a little Spider-Man and a Batman, and I still have some old Spider-Man comics from when I was the age that my kids are. And to be doing this, and when it really hits you is when I hear my kids and their friends talking about it. My kids are young, and to just hear them talking about Spider-Man and the movies and everything. And I mean, it's just a thrill. It's an absolute thrill.
Absolutely. And you guys, you wrote it. When Homecoming came out, to me, it was such an amazing reset. I've seen that film, I can't even tell you how many times. And then Far From Home as well. Just loved that. I loved the, the backstory that we got to learn more about his character. But this one in particular, I haven't been in a cinema for such a long time where the crowd around me was cheering, clapping, crying. It was a really amazing experience. I'm sure you hear that all the time. So, Chris, Rotten Tomatoes recently announced that No Way Home is the best reviewed film of 2021. It's very rare for a tentpole action blockbuster to garner reviews like that, let alone win as a critical darling of the year. So what do you think about that? Are you surprised?
We want to please. I mean, honestly, like, we are on one hand trying to not disappoint our bosses, but also trying to make sure that on a day-to-day basis that what we're doing is fun and entertaining for us. I love that people love it. I mean, like, it's weird because Erik and I, we're working on another movie right now. The movie came out on the 17th. like Erik and I, we were actually supposed to be on a party bus of Marvel going to theater on the 17th, which is like what they usually do. Like, oh, come on, get on the party bus, and then we can go walk in for part of the movie. And then it got canceled for COVID reasons the day of. And I'm like, that's a bummer. I would have really liked to have seen how, like, this movie is playing, like, to people, particularly after like 2.5 years that we've been all like Zooming, and it's like, oh, people are actually going to see this. And then that night I started getting videos like from people reacting to things, and it was I can't say it was like thrilling, because I'm like, oh, I wish I had been there. Yeah. But it was, oh my God, people are watching this thing, and they're like, the things that he and I have been working on with John Watts and everyone for 2.5 years, they were having such a visceral reaction to it. Like, those videos were bananas, and it was so, I'm still regret that somehow that we weren't able to be there and watch them in person. And I actually went and like over that weekend, I went and saw some of it play out. But, like anything you're working on for a while, and you're like, are people going to like this? Are people going to respond? I don't know. Like, this is all daily drudgery. And to see it, like, we had so many conversations about like the Andrew and the Toby of it all. And is this going to work? And what are we going to do? And what's the relationship? To see those videos of people reacting to the Lola scene, like it was really phenomenal. It was like, I saw people lose their brains. I'm like, is this because you've been cooped up for 2 years? And maybe, but I also think it was such a fun payoff to like these actors and everything we did. Like, it was like we were trying to make something that was really rewarding, and to see people react to it that way. And I wish like we had been there opening night and watched it with like some of those. It's funny because then I sent some of the videos. I sent one of them to Watts, the director, and he's like, no, that's my video. I shot that at the Chinese. And so like he went out like on Thursday night to the previews and was just watching audience reactions. And
wow,
it is really, it reminds you how different it is to watch something in person on a big screen. It's the death of a century old art form called movies, and it's dying. And I hope that we can all remember that it's really fun to see this stuff in person, because there's if you would like, okay, I'm going to download this thing on Sony Crackle, I'm going to watch this thing. It is not the same experience. Like, watching people react to that thing was really fun. And that's what I fell in love with when I fell in love with movies.
There's been so much talk about bringing in Toby and Andrew as the previous iterations. I'd rather not cover that ground. You guys have covered it plenty so far already. What I'd like to cover is how the way you guys wrote the screenplay, to me, gave the Toby and Andrew iterations of Spider-Man, like it redeemed them in some way. Like, because with Tom Holland as our current Spider-Man, some people might have just shoved him to the side, but we've actually embraced those characters, particularly Andrew, when he saves MJ, redeeming him from not being able to save Gwen. Erik, what was the key for you in the emotional part of bringing those two guys back, and how did you feel about the payoff when the three of them were on screen?
I think we knew right away that if we're going to do this, it can't just feel like these cameos we're doing for cameo's sake. Like, the biggest reaction can't just be, I can't believe they got those guys, or something like that. We need to treat them like the characters that they are. We need to honor them. We need to honor the movies that they were in, and we need to give them some sort of emotional journey. They can't just come and just show up for this cameo and then disappear, and we just are superficially glad we saw them, but that's it. We have to write up to them as characters, and that was always the goal. The challenge was just like, okay, how are we going to do that? Because as I think Chris alluded to earlier, of course, the focus has to be our Spider-Man. It has to be his journey. This is his movie, his story. Things have to be in service to that, and they can't contradict it or pull from it. But at the same time, we want to give them something that is meaningful. And so that was just the real challenge. And John Watts deserves a lot of credit for watching that ball in particular. In a lot of our conversations, he was really intent on making sure that both of the Spider-Mans that come and join the movie, have their own journey. And we all wanted to feel like when Toby and Andrew go back to where they came from, that they will have learned something and grown. they will not be the same. Their lives will not be the same because of what happened during this movie, just as our Peter will not be the same.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's what I took out of it as well. Chris, the flip side is all the villains that you were able to bring back from previous Spider-Man movies as well. When I posted on social media one day about how I thought Tom Holland was Oscar worthy, I also thought that you guys should be nominated for adapted screenplay. Everyone agreed with me, but then I had people saying, oh, Willem Dafoe as well. He was incredible, that character, the way that he was able to redeem that character in so many ways. What was the key for you in the Willem Dafoe villain character, who I thought was maybe slightly one-dimensional back in the day, but this time it really, really was such a visceral experience watching him perform on screen?
This movie went through a rapid change. Like, he was not the main villain of this movie. For like the whole first version of the script, he was not the main villain. He was a villain, and then we lost other characters, and then we kept on going, well, it has to be him. He's the one who now is the antagonist of the movie. We have to make him the antagonist. And so we were evolving the script as we were writing it and shooting it. And it was, oh, Goblin Norman has to be the villain. How do we do that? And so he became the centerpiece of the movie that he was at first not the centerpiece of.
Wow.
So, I'm telling you how the sausage is made. It's like,
yeah,
it was not like Goblin was there, but he was, and then it became clear to all of us, oh, wait, no, he has to be the other side of May. He has to be the main villain of this. He has to have been given a second chance, and he's still doing what he was doing in the first movie, but in a darker way that now relates to Peter Parker, if that makes sense. Like our Peter Parker. It's Peter Parker now has his own villain, and this is him fighting because Peter doesn't want to do May's way for the whole movie. He's like, until the midpoint. He's like, I guess I got to do this. But like, that was when we stripped everything away, it became a moral choice between our Peter, and we started realizing, and so much of this is like Watts going, oh, wait, no, we're doing the Peter Parker origin story. We're just doing it over 3 movies. Yeah. This is it. This is his moral discovery, because we don't know anything about Peter from Civil War. He's just like, oh, okay, I got if bad thing happens, like to other people, and you don't do anything to, like, it was the Russo brothers and Marcus and McFeely's version of with great power comes great responsibility, but it wasn't born in sacrifice. Yeah. And this movie, it is like born in the blood of May. It's like, that's why it comes down to, I'm going to kill this guy. And then the only way he can learn that lesson is because 2 Peter Parkers from the multiverse come in and they help teach him the lesson that they've learned the hard way. That's why I don't know. It all, like, it's not just all lip service. It's not all curtain calls. It was us with like Watts and Feige and Amy and Sommers, like all trying to figure out like why is this meaningful? Why are we going through this thing? How do we make it real and meaningful? And so that was a discovery while we were shooting.
Yeah. But it seems like it all just pans out in the end. It was meant to be. And like when I saw Homecoming, I always wondered, I wonder why they didn't decide to just make this a purely origin story. But of course, when you see the 3 films together, that's exactly what they are. And then, of course, it leads me to this final question about Aunt May, played beautifully by Marissa Tomei. I was devastated that she was gone. My kids were like, why the hell did they kill her off? But we totally get it by the end, as you so eloquently put it. And Erik, I'm wondering if you could pipe in about that scene, because the way Tom and Marissa play it is beautiful. Watts directs it fantastically, but it's all in the writing for me. And I just wonder, was that a particularly hard scene to get right?
It was. It was for a few reasons. One was, of course, just the emotion of it, and you want to do a death, and you want to do something like that. You want it to be sad, but you don't want it to be maudlin or too much. And so we wanted to get the emotion just right. Also, we had decided, at some point in the process, that was a scene where she was going to say, with great power, and there must also come great responsibility. And that's such a loaded term, and that's one that we had not used thus far, and we didn't want to just use it for its own sake. And when we finally decided that this was the time and this is the place, then it was also a matter of, how do we do the emotion of the death, and how do we get this line out in a way that fits in with everything. And so, there were some technically how to organize the scene and modulate the tone and the build and the flow and all those things. So it was tricky. I'll say, just as a piece of trivia, also, it was also tricky and production wise, because we had different ideas for where the scene could take place, but because of COVID, like we had one idea that maybe it was going to be inside an ambulance, and we had a whole version that was constructed around that, but that was not practical for shooting during COVID. And so then, that's the kind of thing that happens. So then we had to move the scene physically to another place while trying to keep all the other elements working, and we had to make adjustments. And, that's the kind of thing that happens in production. And so it was, but I'm glad that it turned out the way it did, and that people want to say that people started crying. I'm not glad that people started crying, but I'm glad it affected people the way we wanted, that it resonated, because it's so important to Peter's story and to his journey. So I'm glad that people feel that it worked.
Yeah, it really did. It was the emotional.
I will just say also, Tom and Toby and Andrew helped us shape that. What was the night before we were shooting? I remember being in Atlanta, and the whole we did a read through, and then everything got torn apart of the rooftop scene, and then they had so many different ideas, but coming from really great places of where their character was. I think it got ripped apart the night before, and then we put it back together. But it was one of those things where all of them all of them were giving this incredible performance as you are watching their coverage. You're watching it and oh my God, they're all this, they made the scene so great. And we had talked about it for so long, and it had gotten, again, to have the scene ripped apart the night before and then put back together, you never know what's going to happen. But it all came from really talented people, the actors and John. It was oh, okay, no, it's going to be really good. It's just has now, thankfully, everyone's fingerprints on it in terms of making sure that every beat of it was working. That makes sense.
You're talking about Rooftop, right?
Yeah, Rooftop. Sorry, not the May scene. I know I switched over because the callback of the
there's so
May scene, which which obviously John and Marissa and Tom, that is supposed to be a gut punch of a scene, and it was supposed to be you don't see this coming. But then the resolution, at least the emotional, the moral of that scene comes through in the rooftop of the school scene. And anyway, again, it's not us going, didn't we do it? Was, incredible people that you get to work with, and they all care. I mean, that scene would have been worthless. We didn't have that scene in the first draft of the movie, it was just these two guys show up and are like, yeah, here, we're going to help you. And no, we knew that wasn't going to work, but when you were working on this thing for a long time, you start digging in and finding out like, oh, what's the story really about? And luckily we had figured it out by the time we shot that scene.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
It does. Guys, I wish I could talk to you for hours. Unfortunately, we've run out of time, but I just want to thank you for a great trilogy. That last film just touched so many people. Like, it's the movie we just needed at this time. And I hope we get to see, or we get to watch more of your movies, particularly the next trilogy for Spider-Man. I hope you guys are attached to it. I don't know, but we'll see.
Well,
Thanks.
stay tuned.
Yeah, we'll see.